It was a crisp autumn evening when the rumble of police sirens shattered the calm of Fairview Lane. The seemingly ordinary dusk was transformed into a maelstrom of flashing red and blue lights dancing over the manicured lawns and stately homes of the suburban neighborhood. At the center of this commotion was the grand residence of Arthur Millard, a man once revered as a high-ranking judge, now living a quiet, reclusive life after decades on the bench. The police, hot on the trail of a high-profile suspect, had mistakenly set their sights on his elegant home, a critical error that would shatter the fragile peace of Millard's carefully constructed sanctuary. Arthur Millard had always been a man of precision and order, traits that had served him well in his long career in the judiciary. Even in retirement, his disciplined habits persevered. Every surface in his sprawling colonial mansion gleamed with a meticulous sheen, the result of daily rituals honed over years in a courtroom where attention to detail was a matter of justice. In the years since his retirement, Arthur had turned his focus inward. Meticulously attending to the security of his home, he had filled his property with state-of-the-art surveillance equipment, a fortress of cameras and sensors that overlooked every entrance and exit. His passion for order had spilled over into every aspect of his post-judicial life, from his rigorous morning routines to the curated collection of classic law texts that lined his study's walls. Yet it was precisely this obsession with security that would later play a crucial role in unmasking the multitude of secrets harbored within these walls. On that fateful evening, as the police stormed through the front door with their weapons drawn, Arthur found himself caught unprepared by the intrusion. Though the intruders were not unwelcome guests in the conventional sense, after all, the cameras had captured their every move, he was deeply troubled by the hurried mishap. He had spent countless hours reviewing the feeds, making mental notes of every glitch and anomaly. His surveillance footage was his constant companion, a silent witness to both the mundane and the extraordinary events that passed before his eyes. Yet nothing could have forewarned him of the ensuing chaos. As the officers advanced into his private domain, their shouts of command echoed off the whitewashed walls, reverberating through the intricately tiled hallways and into the depths of his personal library, where years of collected wisdom and dusty tomes lay in quiet repose. The initial confusion lasted only moments before the realization dawned on Arthur. These were not the criminals he had been tracking out of personal spite or professional duty. They were unwitting strangers in his meticulously designed empire of solitude. Yet, with the steely gaze of a former judge still burning in his eyes, Arthur decided that he would not allow this invasion of privacy to continue unchecked. The standoff outside his study became a battleground between the old order and the new, where Asa, a graying officer fresh from a commendation he thought earned him respect, looked directly into Arthur's eyes and saw not just a man but a formidable force cloaked in the shadows of his past. With a calmness that belied the intensity of the situation, Arthur slowly raised his hands in a gesture of peace, all while his eyes communicated volumes of resolve and unspoken authority. Inside, the sprawling network of surveillance feeds was already spinning a tale of its own. Arthur's private security system, the unsung storyteller of his residence, had recorded every moment of the unfolding drama with unerring accuracy. His screens, usually a source of pride, were now lined up like digital sentinels, each one capturing different angles of the assault. In the dusty light of his study, amidst the ancient leather-bound volumes and the soft hum of modern technology, Arthur assessed the situation with a calm professionalism honed by years on the bench. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice steady and commanding, "there has been a mistake. I understand there is a matter of grave importance, but you are on the wrong property." The words sliced through the tension like a gavel's blow in a silent courtroom, halting the officers in their tracks and prompting a ripple of uncertainty throughout the ranks. What followed was a series of revelations that none of the parties had ever anticipated. The police, who had launched their raid in pursuit of a wanted fugitive believed to be hiding among the suburban homes, soon found themselves tangled in a web of confessions, evasions, and long-buried secrets. At the heart of the unfolding mystery was the fallen suspect, a notorious figure known as Vinny Delgado. Delgado's criminal enterprises had once terrorized the region, and now the officers were tangled in the fallout of a mistaken identity that threatened to expose much more than a criminal hideout. Arthur, whose mind was as sharp as his once formidable courtroom acumen, listened intently as the officers described a shadowy figure stepping out of the darkness with deliberate haste, only to vanish into the labyrinth of backyard hedges and gated back porches. Arthur's mind raced with memories of his time on the bench, of cases where the truth was a rare and elusive prize. Suddenly, an idea took shape, a way to harness the moment to both validate his surveillance techniques and help the police discern the truth from the twisting layers of confusion laid before them. "Perhaps we should review the footage," he suggested, his tone both conciliatory and imperious, conveying the need for order even in chaos. In a maneuver that would have made him a hero in his own hands, Arthur pushed a button on the control panel, and one by one, the camera feeds flickered to life, laying bare the sequence of events in unflinching clarity. The images that played out on the screens were both surprising and clarifying. One camera, perched high on the turret of a discreet chimney installation, captured a figure lurking near the side gate just before the raid commenced. The figure moved with a measured pace, bouncing between the shadows and the glimmers of streetlight with a familiarity that suggested prior knowledge of the property. Arthur's eyes narrowed as he recognized the shadow's gait, a gait that reminded him of certain movements once studied during his extensive tenure on the bench. Despite decades in isolation, some things remained etched in his memory like the verdicts he had once pronounced. This individual, it became increasingly evident, was not merely a hasty trespasser, but someone who had been watching, waiting, perhaps even orchestrating elements of the situation. The implications of this deduction rippled through the room like a current, touching the officers who now found themselves questioning the integrity of their entire operation. As the footage continued to play, a twist in the unfolding drama emerged that set minds racing and hearts pounding all around. One of the camera feeds, one that primarily monitored the ornate front door, unexpectedly captured a stray reflection, a small, slender figure dressed in subdued colors stepping lightly across a tiled foyer. The fleeting glimpse was almost too quick to catch, but its implications were profound. Arthur had once prided himself on his network of informants, a discreet collection of individuals whose insights had often rescued him from looming uncertainty. It was then that Arthur realized the accused might not be the only one with secrets hidden in his home. The venerable judge, now a relic of old world order, found that his own labyrinth of memories and carefully maintained records was about to play a pivotal role in unmasking the truth. In the ensuing moments, as tension burned hot in every corner of his pursed-lipped expression, Arthur decided to take a bold step. With a quiet nod to the lead officer, he invited them into a private chamber, away from the intrusive glare of the media-hungry public and the prying eyes of curious neighbors. In the dim light of his study, surrounded by a mix of ancient legal texts and modern gadgets flickering with encrypted data, Arthur addressed the anxious officers one by one. "I assure you," he said in a measured tone, "that while this intrusion is regrettable, it also presents an opportunity for us to get to the truth without further confusion. My property and my surveillance system have registered every top-secret nuance of tonight, and I will gladly share the complete record with you." The officers, though initially skeptical of his calm demeanor in the face of what they assumed was a monumental mistake, began to realize that Arthur's reputation was not without merit. His steadfast control, his measured words, every gesture echoed the authority of a man who had once held the scales of justice in his capable hands. As the night unwound its secrets, it became evident that Arthur Millard's home was more than just a museum of precision. It was a vault teeming with stories of valor, regret, and hidden pasts. In the flickering light of multiple screens, details emerged that would later redefine the public's understanding of both the case and the man himself. The surveillance recordings, meticulously time-stamped and recorded in crisp clarity, revealed that the would-be criminal mastermind responsible for misleading the police was not Delgado, the infamous felon, but rather a desperate private individual with a personal vendetta. This revelation sparked heated debate among the officers. How could their careful operation have been so dramatically misdirected? And more importantly, who was the mysterious third party seen flitting around in the background, a phantom in a fortress of cameras? While the police gathered their thoughts, Arthur retreated momentarily into a realm of introspection, a world where memories met reality, and the past was never truly gone. He remembered the days when every decision he made could mean the difference between freedom and confinement, truth and falsehood. In his younger years, long before the fire of courtroom battles had dimmed into the soft glow of retirement, he was well acquainted with the fickle nature of justice. And tonight, as a misdirected raid had momentarily thrown the order of his life into disarray, he felt that same stirring of righteous indignation that had once fueled his every judgment. It was not a feeling born of anger but of resolve, a commitment to ensure that the truth, however obscured by shadows and mistakes, would eventually see the light of day. The turning point in the evening arrived unexpectedly. An officer, whose name would later be etched in Arthur's private records as Assistant Chief Reynolds, noticed an anomaly in the surveillance logs, a minuscule gap in the footage that coincided with a fleeting noise captured by one of the perimeter sensors. The detail was almost imperceptible, yet Detective Reynolds, with an intuition that bordered on the prescient, insisted that it was significant. "Sir," he said, peering at the live feed with eyes that radiated a quiet urgency, "I believe there's an event occurring that isn't captured by the current record. Something that might connect all of these loose ends." Arthur's eyes lit with a spark that belied his advanced years, and with a measured nod, he invited Reynolds to explain further. Together, they pored over the digital evidence, reconstructing a timeline that spanned not only the brief yet chaotic moments of the raid, but also events harbored in the shadowy depths of the preceding days. Every revelation added layers to a tapestry of intrigue that was as mesmerizing as it was perplexing. It turned out that the individual implicated in the earlier surveillance footage had been seen sneaking discreet messages to unknown associates, a clandestine communication that had evidently been the catalyst for the misguided raid. Even more damning was the discovery that some of the communications hinted at a long-standing feud between private citizens and the very public forces of law and order. As the officers unraveled this intricate web, delicate threads began to emerge, linking Arthur's long-forgotten past with the conspiracies unfolding on his doorstep. What had seemed like a straightforward case of mistaken identity had morphed into an investigation that threatened to expose the vulnerabilities of a system built on faith, precision, and, above all, trust. Throughout the ensuing hours, tension mingled with anticipation as the officers and Arthur worked in tandem, each contribution forging a clearer picture of the true events that had led to the raid. A subtle interplay of wit and strategy unfolded, the likes of which seemed straight out of one of Arthur's old cases, a case that had once rivaled even the most labyrinthine of legal dramas. For every piece of evidence uncovered, a question remained unanswered. Why had someone meticulously orchestrated events to mislead law enforcement? Was this merely an act of rebellion, a small vendetta aimed at a single household, or was it something far more extensive, touching on the underbelly of a corrupt network that had long evaded the grasp of justice? The questions mounted, and as the night deepened, so too did the resolve of everyone present to get to the bottom of the truth, however inconvenient or damning it might be. An unforeseen moment of clarity emerged when one of Arthur's personal assistants, a discreet yet observant soul named Lydia, discovered an encrypted note tucked away in an old legal brief. Though seemingly inconspicuous and easily dismissed as remnants of a bygone era, the note was, in fact, an invaluable puzzle piece left behind by an associate from Arthur's days on the bench. Lydia's careful decryption revealed a message that spoke of betrayal hidden behind facades and a reckoning that comes when the truth is set free. Arthur recognized the language immediately, a style reminiscent of confidential memos exchanged in the highest echelons of legal strategy and subterfuge. The note hinted at past conflicts and unspoken alliances that might now be resurfacing in the form of a modern-day vendetta. It struck a chord within Arthur, who realized that the misdirected raid was not an isolated incident but rather a manifestation of unresolved disputes that had festered quietly for years. The confrontation inside the mansion slowly evolved into a collaborative investigation. Officers now stood shoulder to shoulder with the retired judge and his inner circle, forging an alliance that transcended traditional roles. Boundaries dissolved as they pooled their respective expertise. The officers brought the tactical acumen and raw determination of the field, while Arthur contributed the analytical precision and stoic wisdom of a lifetime spent upholding justice. Their combined efforts suddenly transformed the scene from a chaotic raid into an impromptu inquiry driven by a shared desire for truth. Conversations flowed in hushed, urgent tones, interspersed with the soft beeping of monitors that hovered over the unfolding narrative like vigilant sentinels. Outside, the night continued its slow, steady progression, while inside, the storm of revelations deepened into a coherent exposé of misdirection, betrayal, and a legacy of legal battles that had transcended time. As the alliance pressed on, an unexpected twist sent shockwaves through everyone present. A series of phone calls, intercepted by Arthur's secure communication system, revealed that a powerful faction, with deep connections in high government circles, might have orchestrated the entire series of events to serve their obscure ends. The notion was disconcerting at best and at worst, a sinister manipulation of events that endangered not only the reputation of law enforcement, but also the very fabric of the community. Arthur, who had upheld the principles of fairness throughout his illustrious career, found himself confronting a challenge that went far beyond a simple case of mistaken identification. His voice, resonant with the authority of one who had measured and weighed the integrity of countless individuals, rang out with sober determination. If we are to expose and confront this conspiracy, we must do so with full transparency and unwavering commitment to the truth. In the cold light of dawn, an ethereal moment when the night reluctantly surrendered to the first rays of the sun, a tentative calm began to settle over the scene. The once frenzied activity inside Arthur's mansion had given way to an intense, almost reverent focus on the pending investigation. The evidence was slowly coalescing into a narrative that promised more revelations, more twists, and a challenge to the established systems that many had thought impervious to corruption. The officers, now more like partners than adversaries, diligently combed through every frame of footage, every snippet of encoded message, and every whispered conversation overheard by the mansion's ever-watchful surveillance. Arthur himself took a moment to reflect on how abruptly the balance had shifted. The same precision and personal discipline that had enabled him to maintain an almost paranoid level of security were now the very tools saving the investigation from collapsing under its own weight. Amidst this maelstrom of coordinated efforts and clandestine revelations, it was Lydia who made the next breakthrough. In a dusty cabinet filled with relics of a past era, she uncovered an old ledger meticulously maintained by Arthur during his tenure as a judge. The ledger, far from being simply a record of cases and legal precedents, contained cryptic annotations and notes hinting at deep-seated rivalries and unexplained correspondences between influential figures of yesteryear. These annotations, barely legible in some parts yet unmistakably significant, painted a picture of an elaborate network where justice and corruption danced hand in hand. Arthur's eyes widened as he realized that the ledger not only chronicled past battles, but also held clues to a long-coveted truth, one that might explain the underpinnings of the conspiracy at hand. The discovery reinvigorated the group's resolve. Every person present, from hardened officers and cautious aides to the watchful eyes of Arthur's long-trusted cameras, sensed that they were on the brink of unearthing details that could upend decades of carefully maintained facades. The day wore on, and as the sun climbed higher in the clear blue sky, new evidence continued to emerge. A discrete file had been transferred through Arthur's secure network, one that contained sensitive data linking prominent public figures to several questionable financial transactions. The implicating details within the file were as damning as they were unexpected. A trail of monetary exchanges that appeared to be siphoned off to obscure accounts, with the fingerprints of those once thought above reproach. As the file was slowly decoded and its contents laid bare, shock and disbelief reverberated among everyone present. For a man who had built his entire career on fairness and measured judgment, Arthur could not help but see echoes of past injustices, a mysterious echo from the corridors of power singing a familiar tune of betrayal and subterfuge. The officers, too, began to absorb the gravity of the findings, realizing that the raid on the wrong house was merely the tip of a colossal iceberg of moral decay and institutional corruption. In the midst of this revelation, a sudden commotion at the back of the mansion drew the attention of all parties. A small group of local law enforcement, who had arrived independently after hearing rumors of a heightened threat, had unwittingly become entangled in the unfolding investigation. Their presence stirred unease, prompting Arthur to quickly dispatch a trusted aide to intercept and clarify the situation. The aide, Lydia once more taking center stage with her quick thinking, managed to diffuse the situation by revealing the intricate tapestry of evidence that united the disparate elements of the case. The new arrivals, though initially convinced that the mansion was a labyrinth of nefarious conspiracies, soon found themselves reassured by the clarity and order of Arthur's well-documented records. What might have been a chaotic clash of jurisdictions was instead transformed into a carefully orchestrated effort to pool resources and share intelligence, a microcosm of the very cooperation that the investigation desperately needed to pierce the veil of obfuscation that had so long shielded the true culprits. By mid-afternoon, as the investigation had grown in scope and intensity, a surprising development provided a momentary respite for the beleaguered group. One of the officers, who had been meticulously tracing the digital breadcrumbs left by the encrypted communications, discovered a connection that led directly back to a rival faction from Arthur's past, a group of legal luminaries who had, in a long-forgotten case, been on opposite sides of a bitter, high-stakes feud. This revelation was not only a testament to the far-reaching influences of old alliances gone awry, but also a stark reminder of how personal vendettas could manifest decades after their inception. Arthur, recognizing the gravity of this connection, was led to revisit memories of days when the courtroom had been both a battlefield and a sanctuary. His recollections, as vivid as if they were happening in a living dream, illuminated interlinked moments of passion, betrayal, and relentless pursuit of justice. The implications were sobering. Those who once engaged in high-stakes legal drama might still be pulling the strings behind the scenes, orchestrating events that echoed down through the ages like a persistent, unyielding drumbeat of retribution. In the final hours of the day, a sense of unity had begun to replace the earlier disarray. The journey from chaos to a cautious, well-coordinated inquiry had transformed the scene into one of determination and shared purpose. Arthur, who had remained the recluse guarding his private sanctuary of surveillance, had inadvertently become the catalyst for a broader investigation that was now far removed from the confines of his personal estate. His decision to allow the officers full access to his meticulously curated records had not only vindicated his lifelong commitment to the truth, but had also forged an alliance that bridged the gap between the old and the new, between a forgotten legacy and a present-day pursuit of justice. The officer who first led the mistaken raid, now humbled by the unfolding revelations and the dignified resolve of the retired judge, offered a quiet apology that, even in its simplicity, carried the weight of a shared burden of responsibility for the missteps of the past. As dusk approached once again, marking the end of one turbulent day and the beginning of a new chapter in the search for truth, Arthur found himself alone in his study, surrounded by an array of digital screens that had borne witness to the unforgettable events. His heart, though still burdened by the memory of mistaken action and nearly irreversible consequences, beat with a semblance of hope, a hope nurtured by the realization that even in a world marred by error and conflicting loyalties, the principles of determination and transparency could prevail. Outside, the world was waking up to a day that promised challenges and revelations in equal measure, while inside, the retired judge allowed himself a moment of introspection beneath the weight of a legacy that was far from tarnished by misfortune. In the silent glow of his surveillance monitors, Arthur Millard smiled, a slow, measured smile reminiscent of the calm found in a well-delivered verdict. He savored the satisfaction that had come from not letting a mistaken raid, an act born of miscommunication and haste, derail a lifelong quest for justice. Instead, he had transformed an opportunity for chaos into one for clarity. It was a moment that defined the interplay between the remnants of an illustrious past and the uncertain promise of the future, a narrative of mistakes, redemption, and the relentless pursuit of truth that would forever echo through the halls of justice. In the days that followed, the investigation that had erupted from a botched police raid unfolded like a carefully penned legal brief, complete with twists that defied expectations and revelations that reshaped perceptions. Arthur's home quickly became not merely a sanctuary for a retired judge, but a living museum of transparency, where every room, every camera, every whispered conversation was a testament to the power of precision in the face of chaos. The officers, once burdened by the initial sting of error, embraced their roles as investigators who now had the privilege of working alongside a man whose reputation had always been synonymous with integrity. Together they forged ahead, unraveling a conspiracy that, piece by painstaking piece, bridged decades of injustice and modern malfeasance. As each new layer of the case was uncovered, whether in the form of rediscovered paper trails, intercepted communications, or cryptic ledger entries, the narrative became increasingly intricate, yet remarkably coherent. It was as if every element of the investigation were strands of evidence woven together by fate, converging at the crossroads of destiny and chance. Under the stern gaze of Arthur's omnipresent surveillance, no secret could remain hidden for long, and every moment was recorded with a precision that belied its sentimental origins. The retired judge watched with a quiet pride as the officers, guided by his steady hand and the legacy of a formidable past, pieced together clues that chronicled a saga of collusion, deception, and long-suppressed resentments among once-esteemed figures of power. In the ensuing weeks, as the full scale of the conspiracy began to emerge, Arthur was called upon once again to testify, this time not in the isolated chambers of his study, but before a tribunal of peers, investigators, and even skeptical members of the public. His testimony, eloquent and measured as if echoing the definitive judgment of a lifetime spent on the bench, brought clarity to a narrative that many had once thought was irreparably fractured by misadventures and mistaken raids. Standing before an assembly whose eyes were fixed on him with respectful curiosity, Arthur recounted the events of that autumn evening, transcending the roles of victim and custodian of truth, melding the two into a tale that was both cautionary and redemptive. Yet, even as the courtroom drama unfurled with its own share of passion and calculated rhetoric, the world beyond the polished confines of legal proceedings began to take note. News of the botched raid on the retired judge's fortress estate rippled through local media, sparking debates not only about police protocol and accountability, but also about the larger, more abstract themes of surveillance, privacy, and the evolving nature of justice in modern society. Articles and opinion pieces emerged, some lauding Arthur's measured response to an intrusion that was as misguided as it was meticulously recorded, while others critiqued the very systems that allowed such a mistake to occur in the first place. Yet, in every piece of commentary, Arthur's composed demeanor and unwavering commitment to the truth shone through as a beacon of what real accountability looked like, a legacy of a man who had once upheld the law with strict impartiality and now safeguarded its very principles through his steadfast vigilance. In a final twist that seemed almost poetic in its timing, the investigation culminated in the unmasking of a key figure whose involvement had been shrouded in mystery until that moment. An unexpected confession, delivered through cryptic messages and later corroborated by multiple data points, dismantled the carefully constructed facades of those involved and provided the final piece of evidence that validated the entire inquiry. As the true mastermind of the conspiracy was apprehended, the ripple effects of that fateful evening continued to spread through the corridors of power, reforming policies and strengthening the protocols of surveillance and accountability across numerous institutions. Now, with the sun dipping below the horizon once more and a new chapter in the saga of justice being written, Arthur Millard returned to the quiet solitude of his estate. The incident, a harbinger of renewed purpose and an unexpected catalyst for exposing deep-seated corruption, reminded him that even in the twilight of his years, a single moment of crisis could ignite a journey of profound transformation. His home, once a private sanctuary designed to shield him from external chaos, had become a crucible of truth, a place where each camera feed, Every ledger page and each whispered conversation contributed to a larger narrative of resilience, integrity, and the everlasting pursuit of justice. In the stillness that followed the storm, as Arthur sat before the glowing window of his study, a sense of closure mingled with cautious optimism. The events of that autumn evening were not merely a series of unfortunate coincidences, but a calculated convergence of past and present, an intricate tableau woven together by fate, circumstance, and the unyielding drive for truth. The retired judge, with his decades of experience and an unshakable commitment to fairness, had once again proven that true justice was not defined by rigid protocols or fleeting mistakes. It was an ever-evolving pursuit, a legacy built upon the willingness to confront chaos with clarity and to transform even the deepest wounds into opportunities for redemption. As twilight deepened and the final glow of day faded into darkness, the legacy of Arthur Millard and the lessons of that chaotic night continued to echo. The case, now memorialized in local lore and serving as a cautionary tale in both legal circles and law enforcement training sessions, was a testament to the idea that even the gravest errors could be redirected into pathways of truth and accountability. In the quiet hours of the night, when the surveillance cameras continued their ceaseless vigil over every corner of his property, Arthur allowed himself a moment of reflection, acknowledging that while the mistake had stung, it had also opened the door to insights and alliances that might one day strengthen the very foundations of justice. With the first hints of a new day shimmering through the darkness, Arthur Millard closed his eyes and whispered a silent promise, to remain ever watchful, ever fair, and ever unyielding in his pursuit of truth. The saga of that tumultuous night had forever altered the landscape of justice in his quiet community, leaving an indelible mark on all who had borne witness to the unexpected sortie into the heart of his meticulously secured home. And as the reinvigorated investigators, now bound by more than just a shared duty, continued their work to dismantle corruption and ensure that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated, the retired judge's legacy stood as a beacon to all, a reminder that even in a world of missteps and chaos, the enduring power of truth and precise order could triumph over the darkest of nights. In that final, reflective moment, Arthur's eyes fluttered open to greet a new day, a day that promised continued vigilance, a rekindled commitment to justice, and the quiet assurance that every error had the potential to lead to enlightenment and reformation. His home, equipped with the silent yet omnipotent gaze of surveillance cameras and the measured wisdom of years gone by, had been transformed from a mere bastion of personal security into a living testament to the resilience of truth and the relentless spirit of justice. And so, as the world stirred with the promise of a fresh beginning, the retired judge sat back in his armchair, a satisfied smile playing at the corner of his lips. Knowing that sometimes it takes a mistake, however monumental, to set the wheels of change in motion, and that even a wrong house, when guarded by the legacy of truth, can become the birthplace of a truly transformative odyssey,